Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Living Languages Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. We're so happy that you're here with us. We have an awesome guest, Jeannette. And Luis was here last week, so this is his girlfriend, so you guys get to meet her. We did a little, tease last podcast, but welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So we're actually in a different, if the location looks different, we're traveling and we're in a hotel. So, Luis made it happen with all the tech stuff. So thank you for that, Luis. So I wanted to just, we can get started right away. If you want to just give, the listeners a little quick intro about yourself and, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm Jeannette, Luis's girlfriend. And I'm guessing I'm here just to kind of tell my side of the story of like how I grew up and learning two languages and things like that. But I'm excited to be here. I've never done anything like this, so it's a little different.
That's awesome. That's exciting. So the first kind of what gave me the idea to interview you, and this was back in our last season, as I was thinking about, like, I'm really interested in hearing different stories about the ways that different people grew up in and around language and culture. And when I served in the Air Force, towards the end of my service, we had a lot of like Afghani refugees that were moving to the United States, and sort of in anticipation of like us no longer having a military presence there. And so we, in some like places that you wouldn't really expect, like for instance, in Arizona, we had a big Afghani like refugee area, right? And so the refugees would come in, they wouldn't speak English. And oftentimes what would happen is like the kids who were going to school, because they're young, they would pick up English so quickly and they became the translators for the family. So ever since like we sort of got involved with that, and we had like, some of our service members that were linguists volunteer that could help out language wise with the families, they could help out at the schools and the community, etc. It's just kind of been in the back of my mind of like I don't want to say the burden, but just what it places on the child to have to be put in a role where they're sort of like, maybe they're the ones calling the electric company to talk about an outage, or they're the ones dealing with bills or different things that like a child wouldn't normally deal with because of the language barrier. And so that's kind of what gave me the initial idea. And then I was just really curious about your story, because obviously we've talked and we know about each other, but not to that degree. And I was really curious to hear your story, how you grew up. And so like, yeah, if you want to just tell me a little bit about your childhood and what language looked like for you in your childhood.
Yeah. Well, I grew up first knowing only Spanish because obviously like my mom and my dad didn't speak any English. So we grew up just only speaking Spanish. And it wasn't until the third grade that I stopped being ESL. But I learned English, I want to say like mainly right whenever I was like in first grade, maybe. So pre-K, kindergarten, like I was only Spanish. And we would only learn a little bit because like back then we weren't really needing English as much. Not that I knew, because like my parents, we would go to Mexican stores or things like that. And the only English that my dad knew was like for work and stuff. So it wasn't like we didn't go anywhere we really needed to speak English. But I did eventually learn whenever I was like, I would say like first grade. And I started just by like watching shows, or my older brother, he knew more English than I did because he grew up with my grandma. So he learned, my grandpa spoke English, and because he was born here. And so that's where he was learning his English from. And me, it was like, I had nowhere to practice it unless I went to go visit my grandma and my grandpa. Then we could like kind of practice it there. But I started just by like hanging around my brother, his friends, and trying to learn it there. Because like a lot of times I would just pick up on certain words that they would say. And I'm like, what was that? Like, what does that, what does that mean? Or things like that. But it wasn't until third grade that I was very like, okay, I know my stuff now. Like I know English. And so I stopped being ESL. And I feel like once I learned English, I picked up on it really like quickly. And then kind of from there, it was like, okay, my mom was like, oh, well, read this for me, or like translate this for me.
Mm.
And what does this say here? Like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And because I wasn't a shy kid, I
Yeah.
didn't mind like translating for my parents. I
Yeah.
I actually loved being able to go to the stores, and if I saw someone struggling or saying like, oh, like trying to like communicate with like the cashier or something, like I would
Mm-hmm. You
kind of
would jump
step in.
in.
Yeah, I would like step in and be like, oh, I can help you, you know. And my mom was always like, oh
Oh,
my God, like, come over here. But they
but
would be
that's
like,
really
oh, yeah.
nice.
But I'm like, I didn't mind it,
Yeah.
I liked being able to help. And like, I'm like, why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't I? If I understand what they're saying, like, why wouldn't I,
Yeah.
jump in and help them? It wasn't until like, I want to say, maybe I was like sixth or seventh grade. Sixth
Okay.
grade, whenever my parents split up, that it kind of became a burden because my mom
Mm.
didn't know. She knew a little bit of English, but it wasn't like fluent.
Yeah.
And she hadn't actually like worked at like a job, where she required to like really speak
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it was really hard because I had to like pay the bills and figuring out how to negotiate
Mm.
things, or like getting an apartment and like translating all of that, like
Wow.
at 11 years old, figuring out how to do all of that. So that's when it kind of became more of a burden because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like having to do it. It was
Yeah.
different from like wanting to help to like becoming where it's like you have to,
Yeah.
like
That you didn't have an
you
option.
don't have an option.
Yeah.
Helping my aunt as well, like my mom's older sister, like we were very close. So
Mm.
obviously, like anytime they needed something translated, a letter or help with anything, they're like, oh, even like helping her fill out job applications, my
Wow.
and not only her, obviously like my whole family, like
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like basically the oldest because my brother was very like
This was gonna
absent.
ask, like, what's the age gap between you and
So
your older
me and my
brother?
older brother are 2 years apart,
Okay.
but he was very absent, so he wouldn't really help out as much.
Okay.
So it was kind of left to me to like
Gotcha.
take over that oldest child.
Yeah.
And so like making sure that like my if my aunt had needed help, or one of my, cousins needed help with something, or it was
Mm-hmm.
always like, oh, she has it. I mean, and I'm talking like
Mm.
filing taxes, talking to the government about whatever, filling out um their residency
Like the paperwork.
paperwork to get when my mom got her citizenship, things like that. Like
And
I
that
helped with all of that.
documentation, just because you know English, like that's knowing English is different than
It's
knowing English at the
yes.
level where you're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely now, like I said, thinking back and knowing like everything, I'm like that. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I knew so much,
Yeah.
now that I'm older and, things like that. But no, yeah, it's definitely hard.
Did you, because I know you have younger siblings too. Did you ever, like, did they ever, like, kind of come up once their English got good enough, or maybe their English was already good? Or was it like because you had already been put in that role, you kind of stayed in that role, or were they
N-
able to help as they got
no,
older?
because whenever I grew up, it was like my mom only spoke Spanish.
Gotcha.
I was put in the role of like,
Okay.
it was only me because I have three younger siblings.
Mm-hmm.
The second one after me, he does speak a little bit of Spanish, but he's not fluent and he doesn't really write it.
Okay. Okay, that makes
The one after
sense.
him speaks the bare minimum of Spanish. He can
Mm.
understand it, but
Okay.
doesn't really speak it. And then my youngest sister,
Mm-hmm.
barely anything.
So
Like
you were
probably
really the one that's fluent in two
yes,
languages that could
like
really help.
reading, writing, everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So I was stuck in that role, and
How did you feel, like you mentioned about ESL? Like, how did you feel like being in an ESL? Did you like understand what it was? And then once you like graduated out of ESL, like, can you talk a little bit about that process?
um, yeah, like I said, to me, it wasn't so much of a difference until I started getting a little older. Because
Mm-hmm.
once I got to first grade, I was like, when you're younger, you don't really realize like the language differences because you're so young and
Yeah.
you're in the environment that your parents kind of like put you in. But it wasn't until like I got to first grade that I really started realizing like, oh no, there's like a whole nother language, a whole nother, almost like a whole nother world, right?
Yeah. That's
But
interesting. So you were kind of insulated.
yes.
Okay.
But I was very intrigued by learning or wanting to learn English. So whenever I got to like, when I graduated basically from like ESL to be like in a full,
Yeah.
like just English class, like it was some adjustments because also like people would make fun of me for having an accent. And I didn't think I had an accent, but
Yeah.
obviously like you don't hear it.
Right.
But yeah, it was a little hard. It was some adjustments because like obviously when you're learning English and you've only known Spanish, it's kind of hard to like figure out the words because you're hearing it in English but translating it in Spanish in your mind.
It's
So
like a two-step process that you have to go through.
So it's like taking some time. Or even there was still some, obviously some stuff that I didn't know. So I started reading a lot to be able to know. I was reading at like 3 grade levels above mine.
That's amazing.
Whenever I was like at, but also like having to translate all these things and documents for my parents.
Had to.
Yeah.
Did you feel like there were other kids with you in ESL that didn't have maybe that like same motivation that you had and maybe didn't learn English as well as you? Or do you feel like everyone kind of eventually like came along?
Honestly, that I remember, there was some kids that didn't really pick up on it as quickly or as much, just especially because like I say, like it's the environment that you're in,
Right.
if you have no need for it and you don't practice it, then it's kind of
gonna go away.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless.
That's
you
true.
go to school and like you learn it and you're there for like 8 hours, 7 hours and you're learning it, but then you go home and you have that break and then come back. So it's like you're not really practicing it as much.
You're not putting it like into use.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned it and like thinking back, like there wasn't a lot of like kids that I remember that I went to ESL with that eventually came to like the regular just English class.
Interesting. So maybe they stayed in ESL
they stayed,
like longer. Or went to other schools or whatever the case is. That's really interesting. When I know you talked a little bit about like feeling the weight of the responsibility kind of like more so when you got a little bit older, like 6th grade. So like how did that kind of transition as you got older, like graduated high school, et cetera? And then how, did your mom be able to, was she learning English at that time as well? Or like what did that look like?
Yeah, she was she still was obviously, but it's almost like she gets used to, like my family gets so used to like having me do it that it's not like it's not really necessary for them to like really get into that. Like obviously my mom does speak very well English.
Yeah.
And,
we've spoken. Yeah.
And so she's very now, like I would say, very fluent in English, and she understands it very well and stuff, especially because, like I said, my 2 younger siblings, the youngest, like they don't speak Spanish. So she does obviously speak a lot more English, and she has gotten a lot better of like reading her own stuff and doing her own thing, especially because like obviously once I like grew up, left the house, like she really had no choice. Like she couldn't keep calling me.
Right.
But for the meantime, while I was there, like it was, I could help. And but it was always like she didn't feel like it was necessary because she's like, well, I got you. So.
I think like we were talking earlier before we started the podcast, kind of a little bit about AI and how like, obviously we're aware of like environmental concerns and stuff. It's like, but once like you get so used to and dependent on a tool or on something, and it's like you don't even think about not using it. So I could see like it's just human. Yeah.
It's almost like whenever like Google became like a thing, you obviously
just search it.
Yeah. Oh, let me just like look it up.
Let me Google it.
Or even for like directions and things like that. Like you don't need to know which way is northwest because like you just put it in the map and then it'll do it for you.
Right.
So, yeah, it is.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So
me before GPS is not a good thing. So do you think like Do you feel like you being sort of like the family translator or the go-between, do you feel like that changed your relationship with your mom or your parents in a way that maybe other kids that didn't have to do that, maybe, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I kind of like, I don't want to say like resented my mom, but kind
Mhm.
of like, when you're a kid, you're very selfish.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that now until I'm now older, and I look back and
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, like, that was really like selfish of me to just not want to help her, just because I'm like, I
Mm.
don't want to have to be doing this all the time. Like,
Yeah.
why can't you just learn it, or like
Mm.
thinking that way. And I remember thinking like I don't want to have to like translate for my family. I don't want to have to
Yeah.
like, why do I always have to be the one they call? Like, why can't they call anyone else? It always
Mhm.
has to be me to like, read the letter and figure out what it means and where they can go to do it. And then, oh,
Mhm.
well, now that you know where to go do that, can you fill it out for us? And it was like,
Yeah.
but now like that I'm older and looking back, I'm like, it's not fair because like obviously like it is hard,
Yeah.
and especially it being a second language and stuff.
Mhm.
I learned it when I was young, but they're
Yeah.
learning it as adults,
Which is much harder.
which is much much harder.
Mhm.
And then like again, them having me there, they weren't practicing it, and
Right.
so yeah, no, I definitely now see it, but when I was younger, I definitely just
Yeah.
did not want to have to do that.
Do you feel like do you feel like you like it changed like the dynamic between you and your mom? Like maybe you were less mother-daughter and more like, oh, like, like almost a co-parent in a
Yeah.
sense, you know what I mean?
Um, yes. I
Yeah.
definitely felt like growing up, also because like my mom was a young mom, it
Okay.
was like growing up with like a friend. Like she was like a best friend,
Mm.
and it was like she even says it to this day. She's like, "You were my partner." She's like, which is not fair to
Wow.
you because I didn't feel like you were my daughter. It was like, you're my partner in this,
Mhm.
like I go to work and I make the money and you make the decisions. So
Mm.
she's like, she didn't see me like as her,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's my baby. No, no, it's like, you're my partner. We're in this together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely did
That's
change.
interesting.
Yeah, it did change like our dynamic of like that mother daughter,
Yeah.
because I've also felt like I couldn't go to her with certain things because like obviously I have to figure it out,
Mhm.
myself.
Do you think like that skill then translated in a positive way for you as an adult, like being able to like critically think and figure things out in a way that maybe other people, like your peers, can't or
Yeah,
don't?
no, I definitely do feel that way because
Yeah.
I feel like I had to grow up kind of fast.
Mm.
And so because of that, I'm able to be so independent, and like if I don't know something,
Yeah.
I figure it out.
Okay.
So I think it did help me.
Yeah. I mean, and you have a son. Like, how do you feel as a parent, like now viewing that experience? How could you imagine, like, your son being in that
Mhm.
situation? Like, how do you think about it now as from a parental view?
Um I honestly I can't even like imagine like trying to have him do that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It's like I don't want to have to put him through what I went through as far as like having to
Yeah.
help me with all of that, but I also feel like it is nice to have that like, hey, like, if you can help me with this, like,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get that help from him. So it's like I don't want to, but like 50-50 of like maybe I should put some of like just like
Yeah.
small like his own responsibilities. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not mine, but like
Right.
yeah.
Because it's kind of interesting, separate from language. Like, I think about, like, I have a lot of, like, technology, like, things that I need to learn.
Yeah.
And it's almost like parents, we kind of do that to kids now too, right? Because technology is changing so fast. It's like, oh, my kid will do it. Oh, my kid will do it. And
Yes.
instead of like us just learning to do it ourselves, we do become dependent.
Mhm.
Like, Luis, like he's so good with technology. I'll just be like, hey, can you help me with this? Or,
Mhm.
so lately I have been trying to be like more cognizant of that and be like, let
Mhm.
me try to figure it out myself first. And then if I can't, then I'll ask.
Mhm.
But it is really hard to not become dependent
Yes.
on your kids
Yeah.
if they do something really well, and you're like, oh, it's just so much easier for him just to do it for me.
But I love that you're like, you recognize that and you're like, you know what, like, let me learn, you know, because I feel like, you know, with my mom, like, she was very, back then it was more like, well, because you're the child and I tell you to do it, you know, like, that's, and so, yeah, like me with my parenting, I know that and I can acknowledge that. And I'm like, okay, well, like, let me figure it out, or, you know, like, show me and we can both figure it out together. So,
no, that makes sense. You know, how do you think, like, overall, because obviously, like, you know, your son, I don't think he speaks Spanish, right? But he has like an understanding.
He understands it.
But then he's also learning Chinese. So that's interesting. So how does like all that come to play for you, and how do you think about it?
Well, I definitely think learning a second language is important. And whenever he was a baby, it was very important for me to have him know Spanish. And so whenever he was like a year before, as soon as he started talking, I would speak to him only in Spanish. Or I would tell my family, talk to him in Spanish, like only in Spanish, because his dad would talk to him in English.
Okay, so he had like both sides.
So he had both.
That's good.
And so I'm like, to me, only in Spanish. He lost a lot of that when he like kind of started growing up and like going to school and speaking with like his sister and things like that, because like, again, they're not practicing it enough.
Right.
And so he did lose some of that. And that's kind of why I decided to put him in the school that he's in now, to learn that Spanish and Mandarin, because I think it's really important to learn another language and have that, like,
I agree,
at least know two. Yeah. You know, Spanish and English.
Yeah, growing up, like, I didn't know a second language. I didn't learn till I was an adult. And so I agree, like, the people that I grew up with that were bilingual and like in similar situations as you were, or maybe, you know, maybe their parents did speak English, but they only spoke Spanish at home. They just had such a different way of approaching problems and thinking about things, you know, and now like understanding the research behind it and the different like benefits of learning a language, but it really, like, it's really noticeable in people. And I think it really does help you as you progress into like adulthood. And, you know, obviously in San Antonio and Dallas area, like knowing Spanish is very helpful.
Yeah. I do definitely think it has its like pros and cons. Like, pros is like you get to help your family and all of that, but the cons is like you become so like hyper independent that you're like, you feel like you can't go to anyone to help you, because everyone comes to you for help. So you wanting, or, you know, accepting that help gets a little hard. So it's like, it does definitely have its like pros and cons.
That's interesting. I think this is a good stopping point, because as we kind of talked about your childhood, you're growing up an adult, and now like the next, you know, section of your life that we're going to kind of talk about will be like your relationship with, specifically with Luis, and sort of how you being bilingual and him, you know, not knowing another language, how that looks. So that'll be next week. So we look forward to having Jeannette back next week, and Luis, so you get to see Luis again, and them to talk a little bit about their experience in a relationship. And so thank you so much for coming.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're super easy to interview. I love that you're so outgoing. It really helps me.
I'm glad.
But no, thank you so much. And thank you guys for viewing. We'll look forward to next week, and we'll see you later. Bye, guys.
Bye.